Hello, I'm Pierre Negrin. I'm here today to share with you some insight about the behind the scene of the creative process for an Amouage fragrance. I'm going to give you also some insight and on what's going on when I am involved in the development of a new product. This time I would like also to invite Sébastien Jara of Smelling Great Fragrance Reviews and editor at Safleur.
Good morning, Pierre.
Hello, Sébastien.
How are you?
Good to see you.
Nice to see you live.
Yes, live.
Yeah, how's it going?
It's going well. I mean, based on everything what's going on today in the world, so there's nothing really to complain about so far in my case.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, exactly here too. So, shall we get started?
Yeah, I believe so. We can go ahead. Definitely. I have a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and start with this question. Tell me how long you've been creating fragrances for.
Well, I've been involved in the creation of fragrances more than 20 years now, over 25 years. So, and it's been already a long career in the
Mm,
industry.
nice. And you've created 4 men's fragrances for Amouage, 3 feminine fragrances, and 5 library collection fragrances for Amouage, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I think that's a total of 12 fragrances so far that I've been involved with for this brand.
Would you say you've created the most fragrances for Amouage, or are there other perfumers that have created just as many as you have?
I don't know exactly the numbers and the details, but I believe that it's probably one of the most definitely.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And I have several of your fragrances too, so there's some good
Okay.
ones there. So, which was your favorite fragrance to work on at Amouage?
Well, as a matter of fact, in fact, it was Interlude because Interlude in a way was my very first development for Amouage. It was the first time I've been approached by Christopher Chung at the time to start creating a fragrance for the brand, and
Mm,
so that's how the whole thing started for me.
cool. So, tell me a little bit about Interlude Man then. How was it working with that fragrance or creating the fragrance?
Well, for me it was really a new world, because I was not so familiar with Amouage. I
Mm,
had only heard only good thing about the brand. I knew it was a brand of quality, of really luxury, high-end uh, products, and so I was really excited to embark on that journey and to start developing and getting the opportunity to do something for the brand. And so it was really something new to me. What I loved about it is that this brand gives you really freedom to work and no restriction, no boundaries. And in the case of Interlude, I like the name also. It's something that resonated to me, and
mm,
the fact that Interlude, in fact, it's a space in time. For me, it represented a space in time, and it highlights the tension between the chaos, disorder, and also serenity. And
mm,
I really like that. It's trying to stop you, to pause the time and create this special moment and translate that into a smell and a fragrance.
hmm. So does the incense have something to do with that experience for Interlude?
Definitely. The
Yeah.
incense for many reasons. Because number one, it's an indigenous product from Oman. And so, in fact, incense is involved in a lot of my fragrances when I create for Amouage, because it's part of the DNA of the brand.
Yeah.
And and it's really, I mean, Oman is really about incense. It's very famous. Their incense, in fact, is the best in the world. So for me, it was something definitely that I had to use, and also incense. I find that very uh, not only powerful but very long lasting, of course. But it's a very slow evolving smell, you know. Incense, it's kind of has that serenity, it calms you down. It's very, it's the evaporation is very low, and it's a beautiful ingredient to work with, and that supports a lot. In fact, the foundation of the interlude fragrance.
Oh, wow. Well, I have more questions to ask about incense, but before we get to that, why throw in the oregano note in Interlude, man? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, oregano is something that I kind of grew up with, because I'm originated from the south of France. So as a young child, I was always surrounded with all these aromatic plants and herbs that we use for cooking, but and
Hmm.
that are everywhere, you know. And oregano, thyme, I mean, being kind of a little bit similar in smell, uh, it's something that for me is very evocative, and I really loved using those this kind of ingredient. Why oregano more than anything else? Because oregano has also kind of a universal resonance.
Hmm.
Um, Not only it's very powerful, it has a lot of signature. To me, it's also something that reminds me a little bit my roots from the Mediterranean region, the south of France, but also, believe it or not, a lot of people know the smell and the taste of oregano without specifically, you know, being able to pinpoint it, because when you eat pizza, in fact, oregano is really a key product in that the taste of
Yeah.
the pizza. So maybe that's why also it has a universal, you know, connotation, and I would say something that people connect with very, very easily in a subliminal way, because they don't necessarily know or it's oregano, but and it's kind of a comfort, you know. Uh,
Yeah. Recognizability.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So that was your first fragrance for Amouage, but one of your latest fragrances is Portrayal Man. Tell me a little bit about Portrayal Man.
Well, Portrayal Man is yes, the very last one, and that this fragrance is also quite you know, rich, has a lot of body, and the body is mainly based on like patchouli woods that I really enjoy, like cypriol, for instance. And there is a little bit of a leathery effect in the background of Portrayal Man. Portrayal Man, in fact, was trying to go back to the 80s, you know, and what was happening in the 80s, where there was pretty much no limitation. Everything was over the top. Everything was, you know, completely out of this world for the time. And so I was trying to reinterpret that and translate it into a men's fragrance. So that's why I use a lot of those very powerful driving woods and leather and things that usually give you a lot of muscle in a men's fragrance.
So it's like a powerhouse, 80s
It, it,
powerhouse.
yeah, kind of. That was the intention, at least. There is also some cumin, for instance.
I love that. Yeah.
And cumin, I'm fascinated by cumin. I find that fantastic to use as an ingredient. I know it's quite controversial depending on the region of the world you live in,
Yeah.
but it's a great ingredients to work with, cumin.
Seems like cumin and incense are kind of trademarks for Amouage. Is that true? I see it popping up quite a bit.
Yes, incense for sure, and
Yeah.
cumin as much as I can. I try to use it quite often, Yeah,
Mhm.
especially for Amouage, definitely.
So when I was doing my research to review Portrayal Man, the only notes that were credited were Cade, violet leaves, and vetiver.
Uh-huh.
So how come the other notes you disclosed, such as cumin and leather and patchouli, were not listed as notes, or even leather? I think you mentioned.
Yes. What it is I think when we talk to the consumers, we don't want to get also too much into details in order to
Mm,
avoid sometimes confusion.
okay.
We just try to highlight the main constituents, or if the one that are the most striking or the most interesting, let's say. And but violet, for instance, going back to violet, it's a very important material in this fragrance, because the violet leaf absolute is adding some kind of a freshness to this composition.
Okay.
Because, otherwise, if you work only with woods and heavy ingredients like leather, incense, and all that, you don't have anything on the top to lift up the fragrance and to add some light and some brightness also to the fragrance. So that's
So,
the what Violet Leaf Absolute here is doing. It's adding that brightness, that green wet effect, which but in a natural way also.
mhm. So is a violet leaf, is that a popular note these days, or I'm seeing it slowly pop up?
Yeah, I mean, we can say that it's popular, maybe is not the right word, but it's something that we use, I would say, on a regular basis. Yeah.
And
Uh,
what's the difference between the violet leaf and the violet flower as far as the smell goes?
well, the thing is, in the industry, in the fragrance industry, we use the leaves because that's it's what we extract, and that's also the easiest thing to do. The
Hmm.
flower is beautiful. The color of the flower is beautiful. It smells also beautiful when you cut a flower, but it's not something that we can really extract because it's difficult, and in terms of the outcome is not that great in a way. It's very difficult, and that's why, opposed to the leaves, which gives you a good yield, and you end up with something that is very easy to make and to use.
Okay, makes total sense. Let's
Flowers are
move.
very flowers
I'll
are
go.
very delicate, in general.
Mm. Yeah. I've smelled some things with violet, the flowers. They smell like violet candy. So they have that really kind of sweet,
Yeah,
candy-like experience,
exactly. And
which
this
port.
is and this is not the natural smell of the violet flower.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So let's move on to one of my favorites, Journeyman, which I recently reviewed as a Saffron Bond review. Tell me the
Uh-huh.
creative process in making this fragrance, and how was it to work with Alberto Morillas, who you did
Well,
you created it with?
Okay, so first thing is who doesn't want to work with Alberto, right? It's always a pleasure to and an honor to share some work with him. And I think on this one it was a great partnership. We exchange ideas, we exchange like blocks, you know, little accords and things like that. And from there we were able to build this fragrance. The man, in fact, ended up being something very spicy. So Alberto piece was, in fact, carrying most of the spices, that spiciness that you have in the fragrance, and I had more of the other side of it, which is the warm, sweeter, more sensual piece of the fragrance, where I was working, you know, with the Cistus Absolute, Olibanum again, some Tobacco Absolute. So that's, in fact, it was more bringing in more like the fresh, spicy, peppery ginger effect of the fragrance. And in my piece was more about the sensuality, the warmth, and the foundation of it.
Mm-hmm. So in the fragrance, there's a very chili pepper-like experience, but I see that you have Sichuan pepper.
Yes.
And this is not necessarily like black pepper or chili pepper. It's different, correct?
Yeah, it's a different type of pepper, and the Sichuan pepper has more like of a citrusy freshness to it. It's also spicy, you know, but it's not compared to pepper, regular pepper. It's not that spicy. You get more of a citrus effect, a little bit like lemon, grapefruit. You know, it's surprising, in fact, when
Wow.
you smell it for the first time, you're like, oh, wow, I can't believe this is pepper. But and that's why it brings in something a little bit different as a spice note.
I see. Wow. Now you did another fragrance for Amouage called Sunshine Man, which focuses on lavender, correct?
Uh-huh.
Tell me a little bit about Sunshine Man.
Well, this one, it's a little bit but going back to my childhood, you know, and my in the south of France where I grew up. The lavender is really the core of it for sure, but this fragrance is surrounded with a lot of notes that are that you find in the south of France, and there is also a sweetness added to it with a touch of vanilla and some tonka, you know, which makes it more suitable. I think it's not because when you have too much lavender, sometimes people find it aggressive, or they think it's more like a functional type of smell, you know. So that's why here, by using all these other materials, we were able to give it more of a sophisticated and warmer, easier style, you know.
Mm-hmm. What I was going to say was Sunshine Man reminds me of a Middle Eastern sweet treat called halva. And when I smell it, it reminds me of this. It's a sweet treat made with sesame seeds. But I think whatever sweet notes you have in with that fragrance just kind of like comes off like I'm smelling this sweet treat from the Middle East called halva. Have you smelled this at all, or?
No, I'm not familiar with this product.
Yeah.
But maybe one day I hope I will be able to taste it.
Yeah.
But no, for sure, I think the tonka in the fragrance brings in that little bit of an almondy side note. And so with the vanilla, of course, it makes sense based on what you describe here.
I see.
we end up maybe with the same kind of effect, you know.
Mm-hmm. All right. That's good to know. So you've created 3 ladies fragrances. Why don't we start off with the Portrayal Woman, which I'm very
Mhm.
familiar with, and you worked with Annick Menardo on this one.
Yes.
And what I like about Portrayal Woman is the contrasting notes of gardenias, which I love the smell of gardenias with tobacco. Tell me, what was the inspiration with this fragrance, and how is it working with Annick Menardo, who I'm a fan of?
Oh yeah. So here, Portrayal, going back to this one, is again, we were in the 80s. That was the concept. That's what Christopher Chung, who was the director, you know, at Amouage previously, the artistic director, he wanted to go back to these the spirit of the 80s, where again nothing was subtle. You know, it was all about being loud, being over the top, being, you know, crying pretty much. Not crying, sorry, screaming.
Screaming, yeah.
And so the way we came up with this one is that I, we wanted to reconstitute a big white flower that will really be in your face and scream at you, you know, and being abundant, being very generous, and of course striking in the olfactive profile of the flower. So I kind of put something together centered on gardenia. Gardenia was really the centerpiece of that white floral combination. There were also a little bit of jasmine and tuberose to go along with the gardenia. So I kind of developed that part of the fragrance, and Annick had something much more darker, woodier, and deeper, I would say.
I see.
So what we did at some point, because Christopher wanted a very big white flower or big white floral bouquet, but he thought that my interpretation was maybe a little bit too literally floral. So he wanted to have that mysterious, deeper, darker effect that Annick had in her proposition.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end, we combined, you know, the best of both, and we ended up with the one that is on the market, and having that big floracy supported by some tobacco, a lot of woods, and which makes it even probably more mysterious and more substantive, also long lasting, and all that at the same time.
Wow. I recently introduced it to a lady, an older lady that doesn't wear perfume, and she fell head over heels for it.
Oh,
She
okay.
was like, I want to get me some of that.
Well, that's good to
So,
know.
yeah.
I'm
So tell
glad.
me, yeah, she was really happy with it. Tell me a little bit about the other 2 creations for the ladies you've done at Amouage, which I'm not too familiar with.
So it's about the imitation woman, right?
Uh-huh, Imitation Woman.
Yes, imitation. This one is a little bit of a floral bouquet with some ylang ylang as
Mm,
a main piece here on the that you can smell right on top.
yep.
And there is also some rose involved. So that's the combo, and with orange flower. So it's really involving, like I would say, the 3 different floral sea, rose, the ylang ylang, and the orange flower. So that's for the floral effect in the fragrance. But what's interesting is here there is a contrast with some licorice note, which is
Oh,
kind of unexpected. Yeah.
I love that.
So in that fragrance, there is a licorice effect with some réglisse. I don't know exactly how you. I think it's called licorice in English.
Licorice. Yeah, licorice.
Yes. So
Yeah.
this adds something very special to the fragrance, and
Mm.
in you know with flowers, it's not something you necessarily gonna use on a regular basis. And obviously in the background you have some olibanum again,
Oh, okay.
because as I said at the beginning, this is a little bit in the DNA of the. It's more
The
than
brand. Mhm.
part of the DNA of the fragrance, and
Wow.
so there will be some blackcurrant also involved in that fragrance, but this is more of a nuance, you know.
Okay.
It's really that tension between the licorice and the flowers that makes it a little bit different and unique.
Very interesting. And is that the only other one you've done for the ladies, or is there one more?
There is one more which is Journey for Women.
Journey for Women. Okay.
So Journey for Women, in this one, that's an interesting one because here again we have a kind of a different combination of floral notes. It's based on osmanthus.
Oh, wow.
So osmanthus is a beautiful little flower which has a very interesting olfactive profile because it smells like I would say, let's say jasmine combined with apricot. So when you smell the flower, you smell both. You smell that floral effect from a jasmine, let's say, but you get also the fruity apricot note at the same time. So it's like a dual, you know.
Magic flower.
Magic flower, yes. And it's not very often used very often in a composition. So the osmanthus is really what's driving the floral scene, and then it's combined with some mimosa and jasmine and honey. Honey is a very key player here. It kind of filling up, you know, the heart of the fragrance, makes it very rich and almost brings in a little bit of an edible effect, but not in such a gourmand, you know, type like we can smell very often these days.
I see.
And that floral bouquet, let's say, in the Journey is combined with the cypriol and saffron.
Oh.
So
Which
that
you use the cypriol in Journey Man as well.
yes, as well. Yes, I love cypriol. I use this a lot.
Smells great, yeah. So how do you keep the fragrances different when you're working on, let's say, for example, Journey Man and Woman? What kind of creative process do you have that you keep them separate and not bleed into one another? Is there a special creative direction for each one? I guess there is, but
yeah, it's but that's very often the most difficult part, trying to split your brain in two parts, two pieces, and so you try. The right side is trying to ignore what the left side is doing, you know, and yeah, the most difficult thing is just not to look or to think about what you have done for the other fragrance, and you just try to explore new things, but still you need to stay in the boundaries of the concept and of what's expected, you know, for the fragrance at the end. But usually, yeah, if I use, let's say, it happens that I use the same ingredient in both of them, I'm going to use a lot and in the other one I'm going to use much less. Because I mean, in fact, remember that it's all about proportion.
Yeah.
Fragrance. It's like when a chef makes a recipe or a sauce, let's say, it's all based on how much you're going to use of that ingredient over this one, and it's all based on proportion. So if I work for a men's fragrance, I'm probably going to use Cypriol at a higher dosage when if I work for a women's fragrance.
Makes total sense. Yeah. Great. So you have done many creations for the Amouage library collection. Tell me about those fragrances.
Well, those fragrances, it's a little bit of a different approach. Usually they are much more simple. They are more straightforward. They evoke very often just one, smell, or they are more monolithic also in the way they are built, which means that you don't have so many different facets.
Mm-hmm.
And for instance, the last one I did, which is the Opus 11, it's kind of a very woody fragrance. But at the same time, what Christopher wanted to do, he wanted to have some kind of a reinvented oud. So
that sounds exciting.
He was telling me if there was, let's say, no oud on the market, how would you do it? Or how could we come up with something is oud but not recognizable as a traditional or typical oud like we can smell these days everywhere? So that was the challenge of Opus 11, for instance. It's really centered on one item or one ingredient, or something that's going to give you the effect of the oud, but without being like all these other oud, that you can smell everywhere these days.
So does it smell like oud, or it doesn't smell like oud?
It's a fine line. It's a fine line.
Yeah. Okay.
You get the effect, but at the same time, it's not. So if you compare it to like the traditional oud, you're gonna be like, oh wow, this is different. But now if you smell it on its own, of course it's gonna bring you to an oud type of smell. But
I see.
It's done. It's not. I shouldn't say that, but it's kind of a fake oud in a way. It's so. It was very, very challenging. We had a difficult time, coming up with this one, and to be really to get at the end exactly where we wanted to be.
I see. So how long does a fragrance take for you to create? Let's say, for example, this last one. How long? I mean, does that take months or years or 1 year? 6 months?
It depends. It's very variable. It could be something very quick, sometimes just a couple of months, because if you start off of the right foot, you have the right canvas to begin with. In a very short amount of time, you can get exactly where you want it to be and have something perfect. And sometimes, because it's a research type of work. So you're exploring, you are researching, you are experimenting, and sometimes you just can get it right, or you can get it to the point where everybody is on board, all the people involved, the decision makers are all in love with what you are offering them. So it can take months and sometimes years, but usually with Amouage it's not the case, because the brand has they have a very clear vision of what they want to achieve. So they give you completely freedom to create, and but at the same time, when you show them things, they very quickly they know what they are, what they want, and they tell you immediately, oh, we like this, we love this, or we don't like that, or we don't think this is right. They don't make you really waste your time, you know, trying to get something which sometimes people have they don't know exactly how to you know, express themselves, or to exchange with you, and to guide you in a way.
Mm-hmm. So going back to the library collection, you have 3 others that you've created, or 4 others?
But for the collection,
Yeah.
it's I think it's the 11, 9, 8, 7, and 6. I think it's 5 of them.
5 of them. Okay. Tell me a little bit
Mhm.
about the other ones you've created
Well,
with
the
libraries.
other ones, I don't have them necessarily in mind anymore, because
Okay.
these were done a long time ago, and I know that for each one of them it's the same, pretty much the same process. You know, we try to highlight something, one ingredient or one family of ingredient, and also we try to keep it simple, direct, straightforward. It's in your nose, and you get the message. You know, it's
Hmm.
that's the whole philosophy behind the opus.
I see. All right. Well, let me ask you a couple of questions that we had received previously to this live. So, are the ingredients used in Amouage fragrances all natural ingredients?
No, no, I tend to use a lot of natural because it's a brand that allowed me to do that.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it would be impossible to create fragrances only with natural ingredients. We definitely need both. We need synthetic and natural. They are definitely very complementary. And when you use synthetic also product, we have beautiful and fantastic synthetic ingredients, which are really adding a lot of quality and signature, you know, to the fragrance. So here it's really a combination of both.
Hmm.
Uh, Again, like I said at the beginning, with Amouage, I tend to have a little bit more natural than the usual, because the brand and the, the product they make really allow me to do that.
Hmm. So there's always a bad name with synthetics. I receive comments all the time on my YouTube channel. Oh, those are synthetic. Those are synthetic. But it's a good thing to use the synthetics along with the naturals, correct?
Oh yeah, definitely. In fact, people don't realize that natural product can be very harmful, and you have the most poisonous plant in nature, and it could be very dangerous, you know, to 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 eat some plants or some product, natural product, and obviously synthetic are not like this. You know, some of them, yeah, could be harmful, but as much as the natural product. So in fact, it's I think often, and let's put it this way, there are some flowers or some fruits that in fact that yeah that we can reproduce because we have great synthetic ingredients, and this that allows us protect nature in a way, because this way we're not going to destroy, fields of flowers or fruits or whatever. And because we have some good synthetic that can help us reproduce that type of smell, it's good in a way. It's good for everybody, for nature, for Earth, for human beings, and that's why it's like everything else in life. You need a balance.
Balance.
You need yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite, I mean, you've already mentioned some of your favorite natural ingredients, like cypriol is one of them, olibanum. What are some of your favorite synthetic ingredients to use in creating perfumes?
Well, I love using Ambrox, for instance. That's a fantastic ingredient. At Firmenich, also the company I work for, we have a really beautiful musk, synthetic musk. Of course, we don't use any more natural animalic musk. Yeah. So these are really also fantastic synthetic. We have some other woods that are beautiful and that I use on a regular basis. So, I mean, unfortunately, they don't have very attractive names.
I'm sure.
Like natural. That's part of the reason also why we always tend to mention natural ingredients. We talk about fragrances or when we describe them, because for consumers, I think it's much more approachable and it make it more desirable, opposed to talking about 6,3-hexanol, for instance. It's like when you sometimes, well, in the food industry, more and more today, you can, if you look at the back panel of a product you buy, you have this list of all those ingredients. Well, in fragrance also, you can see that. And I mean, what does it really communicate, or what does it tell you? It's not necessarily the most attractive thing to talk about.
Yeah. So this other question was asked, do perfumers have a daily exercise for their nose? Do you have one?
Yeah. In fact, when I come in the morning, when I open the door of my office, the first thing I do is I always smell dry down from the day before to see what's left on my blotter. Blotter being, a piece of paper that I have dipped the day before in the fragrance, and I let it evaporate overnight. And in the morning, that allows me to smell what's left and what the very dry down of the fragrance smells like. So because it's going to be much more diluted after, and also after all these hours of evaporation, it's something that is very light at this stage. So you can see really and assess if you have a fragrance that is long lasting, or if what you smell is right or not right, or it's not what you were expected, and from there you can do some correction and some modification to it. So that's one thing. And the other routine is like every day I'm trying to smell also a couple of ingredients just to refresh my memory, or to explore new ones that I forgot about or I want to try again, or because our palette it's so big, we have so many products and ingredients to pick and choose from that it's hard sometimes to remember all of them. And so you need to pretty much you need to practice a little bit on a daily basis, like athletes or like you know, or musicians, or, you know.
Hmm. Good. So I'm going to circle back to Interlude Man and ask you about what the differences are, because the Interlude Man focuses on incense, but is it incense? Is it olibanum, or is it frankincense? And what are the differences between these particular notes?
Okay, so to my understanding, those three words pretty much refer to the same thing, except that when you talk about incense, usually incense, people have in mind the incense stick, you know,
Hmm.
that you burn. And the incense stick, in fact, when they say incense, it's an abbreviation for incense stick. And the incense that makes the smell of the incense stick usually is made out of olibanum or frankincense.
Okay.
Now, olibanum and frankincense, in fact, they are two different words, but for the same material, same raw material, same product. It depends on the language, the original language they came from. I think the Persian were talking about olibanum,
Mm.
and in Yemen they were talking about frankincense or
Oh.
something like this. So in fact, it's the same thing. It's the same product, but
Mm.
different words.
Different words. Okay. Good to know.
Yeah. Except that,
Yeah.
as I said, incense is more of a commercial word.
Yeah. Like the incense sticks you were mentioning, pretty much.
Right.
Yeah. So is there a new version of Interlude Man to be slated to be released soon? Is that correct?
Yes. So that's the exciting part that I mean, we can reveal it at this point. I think it's something I've been working with the new team now who took over at Amouage,
Mm.
and because we are now in that time of reflection and transition, the new people at Amouage wanted to start doing something, you know, with interlude and
Hmm.
make another version of it. The idea was kind of painting over the actual fragrance,
Okay.
which means in fact it's sometimes, you know, in history we have seen that happening where painters had started a painting and then they finished it and they liked it, and but all of a sudden they came up with another idea and they said, oh, maybe how about I'm trying to paint over, you know, and see what I can get by doing something new on top of this painting,
Mm.
but still using maybe some key parts of the painting. So that was the idea for this new Amouage version, and it's gonna be, in fact, introduce. It's going to introduce an iris piece in this fragrance.
Oh,
So
wow.
right, the fragrance was a little bit re-engineered, still being the core of the actual Amouage interlude fragrance. Sorry.
Hmm.
So it's going to be the same skeleton, same structure. You will definitely recognize it, but some facets have been a little bit shaved and reduced in proportion, and we have introduced and added that Oris piece, which makes it, I think, very interesting.
Hmm.
It adds a lot of elegance to it. It makes it also more special, I believe, and it's very very rich, you know, very and there is also a comfort with this iris effect, because the original Amouage is original interlude, sorry, is very sweet, has a lot of sweetness to it. And by what I did is that I kind of reduced a little bit the vanilla note in there, and in order to replace that or complement the fragrance with another sweetness effect, but not being sweet like vanilla, we thought that Oris could be something very interesting. And Oris is very chic, very elegant, very very rich, you know, has a lot of depth, a lot of drive at the same time.
Mm-hmm. So there's going to be two versions of the interlude. We're not getting rid of the original.
No, no, not at all, not at all. No, no. This is just another interpretation of interlude.
All right. So this trademark oregano and olibanum note will still exist in the new one?
Yes, you will still have olibanum, definitely. Oregano, I think, is much less of it. That has been, you know, a little bit reduced. But as I said, it's trying to kind of shave some facets and re-engineer a little bit, rebalance some of and the proportion of some ingredients.
Interesting. So is it a permanent collection or is it something that's temporary or limited edition? Do you know?
No. I think it's something permanent that's going to be offered as a new interlude. And so it should, I believe, on the latest I know, it should be called Black Iris.
Okay. Nice. Not Interlude Man.
Yes, still, but it's going to be the interlude Black Iris.
Oh, good
so,
name.
Yeah, it's. I find that interesting. It's going to be darker. It's the same blue color, but deeper and darker. You know.
Sounds fabulous.
Yeah, I'm
so,
sure.
Let me ask you one more question. Why do you like to work with Amouage?
Well, because it's a fantastic brand, you know, to be involved with. As I said, they give you a lot of freedom. You have really license to create. There is no restrictions. You can come up with any kind of proposal, and it's a very simple and direct way also of developing fragrance with them. Usually you have one person on their side who is interacting with you, and that makes it very efficient. And so also their concept in their image is all about quality, uniqueness, creativity, you know, luxury, high-end product, high-end fragrances. So personally, something that I really enjoy. And so this brand gives you pretty much everything you can dream about as a perfumer to express yourself and to come up with very special and different fragrances, which to me is something very important, because compared to what the most of the other brands are doing, Amouage, they stay quite, I mean, they stay very unique, and they stay different of what the market, the Main Street market is doing. And this is also something I really like, because this way you can, again, you can use ingredients that you couldn't use with some other brands, and you can do things that are a little bit out of this world pretty much, you know, with them. But
Hmm.
still in a good way and in a very pleasant form.
Interesting. Good to know. And your favorite creation for Amouage?
Well, interlude, because
Hmm.
in fact it was my first one and it worked out very well. Uh, I had a great time creating it, and it turned out that it's a very good seller for the brand also. So at the end of the day, I think this was really a total success for everyone involved, you know.
Yeah, great. And what was the most challenging one to create?
Well, the most challenging, as I said, the Opus 11.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a difficult one. And other than that, I mean, all the other ones were also some time challenging in a way, but uh, not so difficult or not so crazy. You know, we were always able to find a good compromise and to come up with pretty much what was expected uh,
Hmm.
uh, in an easy way.
Interesting. Cool. So should we open up for questions?
Yeah, sure. If there are any.
Any questions out there? I'm not seeing any questions.
Well, I think we probably have
Somebody's asking.
answered already a lot.
Yeah, we have. Any last things you want to say?
Well, the last thing is I'm really happy that Amouage is doing these kind of things, you know, these live event like that, especially today in the world we are in and the circumstances that we are going through, that we are living with. Uh, to me, I see that since we can't go out and buy fragrances anymore today, right now, at least instead of selling finished fragrances in a bottle, we are selling fragrance history, which is by doing this kind of live event. And I believe this is very important also, you know, giving a little bit more information, more insights to the consumers, and selling history is as important probably as just selling the finished product.
Mhm.
So I'm glad Amouage is definitely uh, organizing and setting up this kind of event, you know, for the consumers and in general for the fragrance world.
Mhm. Awesome. Any last questions, everyone? I guess somebody's asking if there are any perfumers you admire.
If I admire any perfumers,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean there are several of them, and I mean I have a lot of respect and admiration for Jean-Claude Helena, for instance, for the work he's been doing. Alberto Morias, of course, because you know, being one of my colleague, also working for the same company, and based on what he has done in his career, I mean this is really mind blowing.
Mhm.
And you know, some uh, other ones like, but more older ones who have really started the to create the fragrances of these modern days, like the Guerlain at the origin, you know, the Guerlain family. These people, they were the pioneer.